All right, so we have this amazing game between Spassky and Petrosian. Awesome pawn storm game. Okay, so let's look at the context, how we get to this pawn storm in the first place. D4, knight f6. So Petrosian's black, Spassky's white. So we're looking for how black won. Okay, knight 3, e6, bishop g5, d5, knight bd2. So it's saying this is this was they're saying a Tory attack. Yeah, basically bishop g5. It's kind of like you guys know Trompowsky with the early bishop g5. Similar idea. And then black just plays really solidly, kind of orthodox style. But white is not going c4 as a queen's gambit. So it's really not super aggressive for white. Black can easily handle this and equalize, and especially with c5. So he's treating this like a reverse queen's gambit. Whenever black, if you have the chance, usually a good idea to do that, like against the London as well. Very similar to a London. Bishop has come out, just g5 instead of f4. So he hits him with c5 and often get queen b6. So c3, b6. And now he's just gonna, I call that the roof or the house setup. I used to actually do that a bunch when I was getting into chess a lot, like around, I think it was like middle school or ninth grade. And I would make this roof thing, and I had a lot of fun games. I used to actually try and, like with white, I'd try to push like c5 and like get the knight in there and grip them. And it would often work. Then you play f5 and it becomes like a stone wall. Well, you're not really supposed to push much, but you should keep the tension ideally. So bishop b7, knight e5. Now this was probably premature, and this is actually the precursor to the entire attack. So knight takes, pawn takes, knight d7. And again, in terms of inaccuracies, I think, yeah, definitely he should have traded in hindsight. Well, I don't think he saw what's to come here. It's just like a series of pawn storms. It's an awesome game. So what do you think? Well, he starts with this. He probably could have already done the carried it out immediately. Well, how are we going to exploit the bishop on f4? What do you guys think? It's a bad bishop. It's blocked by its own pawn, which is why it'd be completely sensible for him to take and then play f4, after which probably you're going to see like f6. So we have like maybe take. Then soon enough, he'll be playing, if not now, he'll be playing f6 and dissolve. I think black's doing pretty well. You know, you might even take with the g pawn and castle queenside, attack him on the g file. But even this, black is doing just fine. Looks good. So anyway, he does this because of that probably. So queen c7, threatening to win the pawn. And it's not really an issue about the pin because you'll just play bishop d6 right afterwards. It looks like, oh, I'm worried about, getting pinned. No, bishop d6, you're fine. So it's a clean pawn if he doesn't do something. Now you could see it's a bit feeble here. So understandably, you want to undermine this, h6. So what? Pretty direct idea. What's the idea there?
Push the pawn.
Yeah, just play g5. Why not? Well, it looks like, okay, you're opening your king side. Well, he has a solution for that. We'll see in a second. So bishop g3 goes g5 anyway. Well, now we're kind of threatening g4, even h5, h4. When you go g4, you got to think about, okay, my pawn's loose on g4. Maybe then h5. Maybe you still take on e5. We'll see what he does there. But yeah, but he, okay, Spassky tries to counterattack. Not to great effect. Now we're trying to trap the bishop, h5, just storm. So that's the initial pawn storm, just these two pawns, which was actually similar to the one we looked at last week, the tall game, which was carried out beautifully, but very logical. So simultaneously, we're going after the e pawn and going after his pieces. Pretty useful. Now the question is, well, let's go here for a second. So we've already made them, make a huge concession by opening the G file. So what, we have double pawns. That actually helps us on the G file because if we play G3, we just take and we push the second pawn. So we have a huge concession. Now the question is, how do we further our attack? And yeah, he can't take because then he loses the E pawn. Just trades pawns on the H file, loses the E pawn. You can't lose the E pawn. It's just too much. So bishop, you can't lose that central pawn. Black takes over the game. So the question is here, what does black do to carry out this attack?
Maybe castle.
Yes, which way?
Queen side.
Exactly. So we already have a ready-made attack on the G file. We just need to prove that our attack on the G file is going to get his attention enough and not let him do something. Well, this is where this is brilliant. So white does a pawn storm. He goes for his own pawn storm with B and A pawns. But to the contrary, we're not going to let him break through. So this is a famous position that Silman covers this. I'm sure it's covered by others. Also, actually I saw it by Soltis. I think Silman is, but definitely by Soltis and Art of Defense in Chess. Very nice defensive idea. You have to play this perfectly. You stop his pawn storm, and then you get to do your own thing on the, but again, ready-made attack on the G file, rook G8, rook G4, doubles up, right? looks good. And meanwhile, he still has to deal with the e pawn, which is pretty bad for white. But we don't want to let him, a5, kind of annoying, right? Give him counterplay. It's not like we're going to mate him right away. He can like move his king, bishop f1, rook g1. He can cover g2. So it's not like we're going to mate him right away. We're just getting an attack. But ideally, if we stop his attack, it's all us. We want a one-sided attack, and then we should, be strategically winning. Very strong. Computer's saying like -1 already, like big advantage black. But how do we stop him? What do we need to do? What do you guys think? There's a sequence. So if you're watching the video, maybe pause it. These are strategic ideas which will allow your attack to be successful. And that means making some prophylactic moves as well. Because remember, you already have your concession to work with on the G file that they've given you. You already have that attack. So you just need to find the right moves here. So this is strategic ideas. Strategic idea of going after the E pawn, a little bit of tactics of trying to trap the bishop, but more strategy in terms of just undermining the E pawn in the long run and the G file and shutting down his attack. And then it's all you. So how do we shut this down? What do you guys think? And then we'll pawn storm.
How about C4? Does that mean?
Yes, you're on top of it. You're on point. So we begin with c4. Bishop e2. So now it's not ideal in general. Like I said earlier, like I used to do that a lot when I was learning this stuff. Well, generally you bypass the d pawn, but Stein has showed how bad exploiting Zucker, how bad that could be to bypass, but or just to push in general, give up the tension. But here it makes a lot of sense, because we want to shut things down. Now he does have the d4 square for the knight, but no, he can't really go there because you take e5. So he's totally tied up. So he shut down any c file action. And by the way, if he had taken, maybe he should have, but if he had taken, then you probably have like I don't know, probably he'd take back with even the bishop. That's a tough call. But also a4, a5, he can shut him down as well, just similar to what he did. But I think he should have, again, a couple of improvements. Well, any brilliancy comes about from, your opponent playing imperfectly. If they play like a computer, you probably would, like the best computer, you probably wouldn't get a brilliancy. But yeah, they make a couple mistakes, but then you get to, it's a human game, you get to create a masterpiece. So c4. So, and this allows us to keep locking things up. Now, this is kind of a famous move, I think, from the perspective of, really nice defensive chess. Again, the defense to attack. And as you said earlier, Matt, you don't think of Petrosian as a pawn storm kind of guy. Well, he gets to pawn storm because he's such a good defender. Now, he doesn't necessarily do it like free, like all out, free for all, like a brawl where you're doing it to him, he's doing it to you. No, we're calmly doing this. We're shutting him down. And then we get to do whatever we want, which is in this case, a nice pawn storm. That's how it works out. So you have a free hand. So what do we do here? How do we shut him down?
Maybe D rook to G1 or possibly push the H pawn.
Well, that's what we want to do aggressively. And that's the thing. That's there for us. Rook, as I said, the G4 idea. So yes, your idea here going rook D G8, rook G4 doubles. That's what he does. And you can't move the knight because then you still lose the E pawn. And that E pawn's and that'll help our pawn storm as we're kind of foreshadowing pawn moves. But that pawn's gonna be very difficult to defend. But now the thing about the H pawn is it sort of creates like a wedge. It makes the G pawn a de facto backward pawn because it doesn't want to advance. It can, but then you take it and you hit him with the other pawn. So you get to use your pawns as battering rams, which is a nice way to use those. You often do that with double A pawns too. So they look bad, but like, look, it opens the file, they're battering rams, right? You give them away or trade them off while inflicting damage. But yeah, first we want to really shut them down. Then we'll do your thing, Todd. How do we shut them down over here? Well, but what they might do, if you think about it, maybe B5, then A5. Because if they go A5, you go B5. You want to that's the point though. You want to shut them down here. Why give them anything, right? Again, you're not in a huge rush. That's not going away. So how do we shut down the A and B pawns?
A6.
A6, nice. Have you seen this one before? You guys recognize it?
No, but that's the move that I see.
Yeah, that's the only way. Because, well, A5, he's gonna open the B file. So A6, you're ready to shut either one down. And the thing about B5, like again, let's say you do this. When they go B5, you don't have, well, obviously A6 to A5, they take en passant. Otherwise, it would be similar to the way he's setting up. But you take en passant, and we don't need that. Then he's like going to start putting pressure on the B pawn and maybe hit us with A5 later. But the B pawn will become a little vulnerable. So we just don't need that. We're probably fine, but why? When you go a6, he's got nothing, right? A5, b5, zero things they could do. You know, not really airtight. Well, airtight over here, but the king actually has air a little bit, which is fine. They're not going to smother, just shut down their lines. King h1, rook dg8. Now he proceeds. So he's defensive. Rook g4, queen d2, doubles up. Now computer's giving like -1, understandably, at least. Now after a5, b5 is giving -1.6. Because now white has zero prospects. See that? Nothing. Again, knight moves, it doesn't even do anything. Again, there's always that square. Problem for black is just that bishop's stuck. Maybe we try and push later. That bishop's not our greatest piece, but we can live with it. We have, you know, this bishop could come into play on e7. Eventually we'll get into play, but the rooks are amazing. Pawns are doing great, ready to go, tying them down. But really, if we can break through on e5, eventually we'll get it. And again, if we push, we can unleash the bishop. So we'll make them work. But main thing is pawn structure greatly benefits us. And this is the prelude. So rook 81, bishop f8. Now, why do you think he did that? He's just furthering his attack, very direct. Again, his opponent's totally spellbound here. What's the bishop doing on f8? You know, as I mentioned to you guys, I have a mangled foot, so I'm just letting it sit up and chilling right now. But yeah, so what are we doing about this?
So you're gonna go to G7 and then attack the E5 pawn.
That's it. Yeah, just very direct. And interestingly, this could cascade over to the king side. Well, it will, because you got to work in the center often. You know, it's not enough. You'll see this principle of, you know, attacking in two parts of the board. Now we have stopped his attack on the queen side. We actually do have, I mean, the c pawn's useful. Like, what if we ever win their c pawn? We can have pass pawn. They might have to worry about that in some, you know, future scenario when things open up. But mainly it's that, you know, you can start rolling in the center in addition when you win the pawn, and you're just up a pawn for endgame insurance. Well, they go away, looking at the rook, and then he takes. Well, you know, it's like, do you need to do this? Well, you have such a great position. Why are you giving him an exchange? Well, you got to further your attack. Let's say you simply retreat. Well, the bishop's going to take h5. It's kind of the sheepish retreat. I mean, how are we furthering our goals here? We just trade off pawn. We get this. I mean, we get the central pawn. But imagine, okay, let's say you give away. Let's imagine giving away the exchange. And interestingly, it gives black -2, as if he's up the exchange. Well, it'd be a down a pawn, right? But it's the positioning. It's all about the positioning. So think about what he's going to get in return for the exchange after knight takes. You have to envision. Let's envision it. Let me get rid of those annoying annotation errors. So what do you think? What do you think about this idea of you get the central pawn as you've been working for? He takes, let's say, with the knight. So he doesn't give you a bishop pair yet. He takes with the knight. That'd be useful to have the bishop pair too. So he takes with the knight, pawn takes back, or even, yeah, probably pawn takes back. Unless you want to sack both exchanges, probably not necessary. So what's going on after knight takes, pawn takes back? Do you think it's worth it, and why? To sack the exchange for a pawn?
Yeah, I think it's worth it because then you could just push the G pawn, and his king is super vulnerable.
Yeah, you have a G/H. So there's the beginning of your pawn. Well, interestingly, they're kind of like coming back to they're completing their unfinished business, right? Because they began on H5 and G5. Now they're going to H4 and G4. Like, okay, we're kind of reincarnating on G4, right? But that's not it. Now that's it. Like I said, the tall game, he uses H and G pawns against the Sicilian, which isn't, but he does so amazingly. Here we're doing it, it's just different. That was a brilliant tactile game. This is like as you said, Matt, it is a little more Petrosian style. It's kind of more of very slow and steady and inexorable. Just steamroll him. But yeah, brilliant conception here. And you know, he's like, oh, I finally win the E pawn. But you're giving up material to do so. But think about it, you undouble your pawns. You can steamroll him. Again, that center is going to be very valuable. Just ignore him because you want bishop d6. Now, I guess what's he going for if pawn takes? You have to worry about like take, maybe queen d7 check. I don't know if that does anything. Maybe it's kind of annoying, right? So he just goes here. He's not gonna. He has no intention of taking. He just wants to, and he wants to open it up. Think about it. Actually, if you take, he can blockade the pawn too, and you're not really going to get your bishop in that easily. So he's like, okay, if you take me, I probably take back with the bishop, and then my bishop's aiming at g2, and I could play h3, chip it open, h5, all that good stuff. And interestingly, this is one of those scenarios where they have the rooks, you're not in exchange, but your rook does more than theirs. So it's like, okay, what good is the exchange for you? White has no activity with his rooks, purely defensive. Interestingly, he's trading, but he has a clear idea here. You'll see. All right. Let's finish what we started here. What's the theme of the game? Now really we saw the context was important because that allowed all this to happen with our H and G pawns, with our center, with us having a kind of one-way mirror, one-way street to his king. They can't even dream of getting to her. Even if the queen, I mean, the queen could have gone to a7, but she's not going anywhere, right? There's nowhere to go. No one can accompany her, can work with her. And now she's just out of the way. A lot of times you win games because they go like pawn grabbing on a2 or a7 or something. Not pawn grabbing, just like square grabbing, but for what, right? So, okay, so now we begin we continue our operation and really comes to a head. So what's our next move? What do you guys think? What are some candidate moves that are aggressive?
H,
H3?
yeah, H3.
That's a candidate move. Now, interestingly, I want you to think about this from a defensive perspective, as Petrosian's brilliant at. If you go H3, similarly, what does he do?
I see a better move. I think
But just to clear that up, what would he do if you go H3?
probably take with the pawn.
Not really. No, not necessarily.
G3.
He doesn't need it. G3, you said?
That's what I said.
Yeah, he doesn't need it. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah, right.
He's not going to take. Yeah, he doesn't need a take. Because it's just like you worrying about them pushing the a5. No, you don't need that. So not yet. What's the other thing? You saw something else, Todd?
Yeah, G3.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
That's to come. But first, let's deal with it. But that's not enough on its own necessarily. It's good.
Oh,
Let's see. G3, F4. No, it's good, but you want more. Let's just
bring the knight in.
Storm. Now this is like last time I showed you guys getting 2-pawn storm. We have a 2-pawn storm. So that's your hint. We want more. We're gonna totally storm him with like everything we got on the center
so
king side.
Then F5. Does that work?
Well, coming, but before that,
I guess E5.
well, that's all we got, right? Let's work our way.
Right.
Out.
Well,
it's away from the king, right? It's away from the king. That's why we will look there last, naturally. But look, now F5. That's nice, right? The idea being that we want to open up our bishop. See, like I said, that bishop wasn't doing much, but because of play in the center, so winning that central pawn actually is part of our operation to open the bishop, which is going to make Todd our h3 push more effective. So yeah, we do all that. We actually play h3 and g3, but we only do so when we're ready. We know it's coming. They can't stop it. See what I mean? And then you can unleash the bishop while pushing and attacking the queen and all this good stuff. So a lot of tactical elements. Look at the eval. You can see the little line on the right. It keeps going up, up, up. Naturally, we go here. Which is a nice move. Knight f6. So now we have like a 4-pawn. So we had like 5 pawns kind of in action. Now we have 4 pawns in action. This is a nice move because you allow a check. But so what? It's part of your goal. You're furthering. Well, first of all, it's useful to move your king anyway. Why not? But this is actually furthering your goals because you want your knight in the game and you want your bishop in the game, right? You have the option of bishop c8 now. Doesn't matter. Okay, f3. There you go, guys. G3 and bishop c8 and g3, right? So this feels like a King's Indian, doesn't it? This could literally be a structure out of a King's Indian. After the e-pawn might move somehow, you might even sack on there or something. But this could definitely come out of a King's Indian almost, right? Where you get that, you start shoving your f pawn and then your g pawn and h pawn, and you get this pawn chain. You begin with the light squares, then you begin to f5 and g4, then you go f4 and g3. You guys seen this, right? It's the same concept. You know what I'm talking about, the King's Indian with black?
Um, I had it played against me once, but I never played it.
But you know what I'm talking about, yeah, this pawn storm idea out of a
Yeah.
King's Indian. But this is nice. It's just, the setup is very nice. It's not just usually King's Indian, you have pawn storm, but effectively F pawn beginning with that and shoving to F4, and then you have G and H. And here we also include the D and the E. they're all in play. It's pretty cool. So but now we have them in the mating net. And as long as it's kind of reminds me of the V is for Victory game by Capablanca, but he's aiming he's on B6, not G3, but he's coming this way. And then ultimately he orchestrates it so he's breaking through, but he knows this is just enough. He has the A file. Here we have the H file, but we know that's just enough. If you can't break through, okay, it's not worth it. Even if you had a pawn H3, like you might stack on H3, but he doesn't have that. So we know we're opening the H file. It's just enough. It's in the mating net. Okay, he tries to get away, but he's not going anywhere. And you see the eval over here going up a little bit, sliver over here, up, up, up.
I
See that?
can't see it on my.
Do you see it at all? It's minus 5.5 according to Stockfish.
It's kind of hard to see on the through the.
Yeah, no,
through
I
the
have it. I have it
Zoom.
slim. It's like slim
I
there.
see the bar, but I don't see a number.
No, not the number, but you just see the bar going up. I don't want to like get too much into the weeds with the computer right now, but you get the idea. You get the idea. It's like spiking, it's moving off the chart soon enough. Okay, so take. There it goes again. Pawn storm.
Wow.
You got to finish the job. Right? You got to finish the job. Effectively, this is like, it's like one of those things that where you plug it into Stockfish. It's like, oh yeah, it's -5, easy win. But still, if you play this wrong, you can lose. You could still mess this up. I mean, it's hard at this point, but still, you got to play accurately to finish them off. Now, this is real nice. Nice style here. Finishes in style. So E4, see the eval bar? Look, every move is like up, 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 up. Okay, this is a nice move now. So again, like you just want to keep your pawn storm going. Imagine we want our pawns on F3 and G3. Imagine it's almost like a king and rook game. You'd want your king on G3. As long as you take away those squares, same concept. Kings and the rook comes down. In this case, it's pawns covering. But how do you get there? You take, the queen just takes. You're not there yet. So how do we get the pawn to push? And we need to mobilize everything. That's your hint. So how do we do this?
How about rook to G8?
What's the idea there? What's coming next?
Then when he moves, if he moves to,
You got to get in there. You got to get in there, right? You know what I mean? You're getting away from your file. You want to be on the file. That's your hint there, right? Because you need to mobilize everything, maximize your forces. So we're happy on H8, right? We're happy on H1 if it works. Rook H1, King G2, Rook H2, King, nothing there yet. We need to further this a bit, right?
Yeah.
But you see what I mean? So not, I'll say not that one. So stay on the H file. What else? How do you get your other pieces in the game / pawns? We're trying to really maximize. But again, the G pawn's good. If we have the F pawn, that's even better. We already have the mating. I mean, if you had a queen in there too, that would be good. You're furthering all of that. We're going to deal with our knight and our queen and our rook and our pawns. Just beautiful coordination. This is really just tech, almost like it's a late middle game attack effectively, but it's just like effective technique to finish the game.
How about queen to D2?
Queen where?
I mean D7.
And then swing in. That's probably winning, I think. That's probably very good. Queen D7. I mean, he could run, but he can't hide. He's so congested. King E2, you just take it. Then Queen G4 check. King up. Yeah, it's not over yet, but it's bad. Something else though, it might be fine. But he does a really stylish move here. Think about what I mean. It's not a typical move in a way then,
Oh.
but it's a breakthrough move. And again, it's associated with pushing your pawns to F3.
What
Are we sacking a knight here?
Okay. Where are you sacking the knight?
G4.
Drop it. Just drop that knight on G4. Well, so you're doing multiple things at once. It's really a multi-purpose move. And I think that's the best move. Yeah, it doesn't change the amount much. So it's but it's stylish too. Right? You hang your knight, but if they take, you play F3. And you're threatening mate rook H1, right? If they don't take, well, you have the queen swing now, like you're talking about, Todd. You have a queen, then you have queen and rook coming in, who'll probably get mated pretty easily. So your pawns are serving as a mating net also. Even as they stand, it's a mating net. I mean, their F pawn's in their way. You have the G pawn. I mean, they can't get out of there, right? They're in the net. So if he doesn't take, you have stuff like, well, just queen H6 ideas, maybe rook down, queen over, and knight E3 check. And although I don't even want to go knight E3 check because the rook will take. No, then you have rook H1 check and you skewer them. See that? Rook H1 check. If you go 93 and you fork them, that's the threat. That's one of the threats. Also rook down, but rook takes E3, rook H1 check, you win the queen on D1, see? Then you take the, yeah, that's just winning. Then you take it back. Well, then you'd have like pawns and the queen for two. No, the queen for, yeah, that's winning. So, yeah,
Yeah,
G4 is pretty bad, right? Now we got F3 and it's lost. He resigns now, actually. He resigns. Well, let's see. What's he gonna do? I mean, the queen and rook are coming on the H file / F file. No defense. So interestingly, do we have even material? You're up a pawn currently. And if they take that pawn, it's even material, but now we get to come in, right? There's actually a one more finesse here, a little more flair. How do we finish him here? You see a cool tactic to finish him off efficiently?
maybe, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Wait a second. Is that gonna work?
No.
No, that only works if he accepts what you're offering. You see what I'm talking about? I mean, I think we can play very mundane queen H6, you know, queen H6 come down, game over, right? Because you're, well, again, rook takes pawn no matter what, you have the skewer rook H1. King up. I mean, queen's coming in, but yeah, you're gonna be up a queen and you're gonna mate them at the very least.
What about G2?
Rook G2.
No, pawn G2.
Oh, pawn G2. Where are you going from there? Maybe queen G3.
I don't know yet.
But if you go to H1, rook H1, king takes G2, threatening queen H2 mate. That's probably good enough. But I think this move might just be,
Well,
very
you could
direct.
bring your-
You just come down. They can't stop that either. It can't stop rook H1. G2,
Well, after
same
you-
concept. Same concept, rook H1.
After that, he can't do anything.
Yeah, he has to give you
With
the queen. Probably has to give you the queen if it takes on E4. Again, you skewer, you win the queen, you're up the whole queen. Yeah, it's lost. That's lost.
Yeah,
That-
but I mean, if he like say takes the pawn, you could also play queen G3.
Yes. Then that's
and then rook
that's mate
H1 is
that's mate in
mate.
one. I think that is a mate in one. Because he doesn't have any no. Oh no, it's not mate in one. He has spite checks. Yeah. Then he can bother you for a
Oh
little
well, that might be
spite
more than
checks, rook
spite, but-
HA, make you take. Yeah. He has a few moves. But yeah, this is probably the easiest. Don't no, like I said, sack the rook looks tempting, right? King takes, you swing over, but he does this move. And now your rook's hanging, you don't want to trade. Then in that case, you're like, okay, fine, I'll go back. Can't go to F1 because he gets hit by queen check and mate. So he has to go here. And then you just repeat. And you're like, all right, fine, I'm going this way. But this is over. He can't defend this. Okay, again, rook takes, you have to skewer. But I mean, the threat is rook down and then queen H2 mate. Because that E4 pawn is creating a mating net. So you have all the remnants of your pawn storm. Just rubble, kind of rubble. The remnants of the rubble here. But it all spread about, but it's just stopping him on dark squares, light squares coming in. So yeah, but really what it is like it's just a good example of prophylaxis. And then it plays itself, but he still had finished it beautifully. But this was because it was all him. There was nothing that white could do. He was spellbound. He has a check. Okay, he's getting hit by bit. She's going to get attacked by bishop c8 anyway. And then it's done. I mean, he's in a mating net. You can't stop h3. It's just like a very, again, this is very similar to King's Indian. Any King's Indian big attack where black shoves those pawns and embeds the g3 pawn, very common, or even sacks the g3 pawn. But often it's embedded h3, and then you might sack on h3 if there's a pawn there. You break through. Well, that's a nice pawn storm, huh?
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so I'll stop this one, and we'll take a look at another pawn storm by Le Bortonais, among one of the most famous. That's a good one to know. But yeah, this is a great defensive game, defense/attack. It's like, again, you already have your ready-made attack, very aggressive with the G pawn push, but it's like in an Italian too. Bishop G5, early pin, go H6, G5, castle queenside, no problem, right? So keep in mind, you have that option, even if it looks a little open, you sealed it, boom, it was all you. So really
Hey,
awesome.
Dave,
Yeah.
I was wondering in this position, would it be quicker to bring the queen to D2, preparing for the push on
Oh, so you're saying first queen D7,
yeah,
then push,
queen
and
D,
then queen H3 mate.
yeah.
Let's see here. I mean, after G3 on the next move, since he's in the first, we move the net,
Yeah,
right?
it's White's turn, so
Yeah, you're saying, but you're saying right after this move, not before this move.
yeah, after this one.
Well, let's think of a defense. When he did this, it's direct break open, but the question is, do you want your queen coming in? Well, he's going to go here anyway. See? So you anticipate this move, so you want to be able to take back with your bishop, because you can't take back with your queen, right?
Right, so how
That-
about
that-
bringing the rook?
That's why. And then
How
the
about-
rook, you say?
How about
It's just
bringing
gonna
the
be more
rook?
complicated because you want to be able to take back with your bishop. You say rook here now.
Yeah,
It might be more complicated. Let me see here. Well, you're gonna have to sack the exchange to break through now. No, you move your queen. But you're gonna take, if you move your queen, you're gonna take with the bishop anyway. So you may as well just do it. You see what I'm saying?
why don't you just take with the rook and then,
But where's your mate? So you already had something like this, but now you don't have a mate. You don't have queen H2. See?
uh,
So it makes your job a little harder. You can still go for knight G4, but even knight G4 doesn't mate. Knight G4, knight maybe has an exchange stack. You see what I mean? So it's more direct. The way he did it, let's see how he got through. The way he did it, he basically, the way he orchestrated this is he leads with the rook, and then the queen comes behind. But given that there's no mate yet, she's fine there. And she happens to be guarding the D pawn and blockading the E pawn and blockading their D pawn. So you see, you look at it, absolutely, it's a good question. And you should be asking yourself this question during the game. And ultimately, this is, yeah, I think you just played it pretty perfectly. You probably would have won either way, but this is clean. Because remember, you have to anticipate, what do they do? Well, when they have the bishop on F1, it's more difficult. So that's why you just have the bishop take first. No need for any more sacrifices yet until you sack your knight. But that's once you know you're there. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I'll stop this one. And we can move on to the next one.